Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2019. And whilst we await the Fed's announcement on interest rates, we published a preliminary video about this just a few hours ago, and we've put a link in the box below. We've been asked to give our opinion on the outcome of the UK general election, which is actually taking place tomorrow. Now, I'm pleased to announce that we have controversially Greg on the phone to discuss his appraisal of how he believes the election result will actually pan out. Good afternoon, Greg.
Afternoon.
It's 2:30 p.m. in the United Kingdom, and we're seeing headlines that the Conservative Party has dipped a little in the polls, calling into question the guaranteed Boris Johnson election victory. Tell us what is happening, Greg.
Well, firstly, I think you have to treat polls with a great degree of skepticism. Secondly, you have to treat the media, whether you're looking at the BBC, the ITV, or Sky, or whatever, with total skepticism. Because as I heard the other day from one professional commentator, he said he was of the opinion that Sky was doing more work to promote Labour than the Labour Party was. And the BBC, in the main, is strongly socialist and so biased, I actually never listened to it. They have no individuals of stature left in terms of interviewing and politics, because the news has broken down nowadays into slebs and gossip. There's very little hard news. And even when you start looking at programs that are supposedly documentaries, there's a huge amount of propaganda in the background of documentaries, such as the endless drivel about climate change that is so dishonest, it's unbelievable. So firstly, an air of skepticism about what we're hearing from the media. I still stand by my statement that the Tories will be 50 or 60 seats ahead of Labour. The problem is that there will probably be, at a guess, 37 to 42 seats with the SNP. I think the Lib Dems will take a trouncing relative to the hilarious claims made by their leader, Jo Swinson, at the beginning of the election when she was promoting herself as the next Prime Minister. I think the Downing Street cat will have more say than she does in Downing Street. Her position has fallen like a brick, partly because it has become more and more polarized between the two main parties, because there are the tribal voters of the Labour Party, and with its problems at the moment, it is socialist Marxist in leadership. It's utterly bereft of anyone who could constitute a cabinet. John McDonnell is in line for Chancellor, and I should imagine from the comments he makes, he has to take his shoes and socks off to count numbers bigger than 10. Diane Abbott, whose son is currently awaiting a court appearance next year, at the beginning of next year, for assaulting a police officer and biting another one and spitting at yet another one, is in line to be the Home Secretary, responsible, of course, for the police that her son is causing problems for. It's all very well saying you can't choose your parents, but parents of young children do bear some responsibility for them. And somebody who can't even manage her own son should not be laying down law about law.
On that note, Greg, we've noticed that sterling has actually fallen a little against the dollar because of the announcement this morning in the polls that the Tories are not going to do as well as originally thought. And I have now read that some of the market makers and foreign exchange experts are saying if the Tories win the election, then we will probably see the dollar fall against sterling to about 135. At the moment, it's 131. It was 132.5. And if, of course, the Tories lose, then sterling may very well fall to about 128 or 127. Now, surely it's all very well saying, well, it depends which newspaper you read, but the markets are factoring in at the moment a not great victory for the Tories.
They may well be listening to the same news broadcasts that are plugging Labour like there's no tomorrow. We keep getting repeated the story of the little boy who, in my opinion, was set up to look as if he was asleep on a hospital floor because he was so ill and there was no treatment and no bed. Well, for starters, they had grabbed as a prop an oxygen mask, which he wasn't wearing. If he had been allocated an oxygen mask, he had obviously been seen by medical staff. So I just cannot believe that picture. But there is not a single question asked about it on any of the news I've seen. So you may well find that the media is picking up news from the media. So the projections for the activity of the pound and the dollar could well be being influenced by that. However, I do appreciate that Corbyn has been closing as a result of what seemed to be dirty tricks like the one with the little boy in the hospital and media support, and the margin between the two has closed a little. The Tories will still be a long way ahead of Labour, but one of the more extreme parties in coalition could be the kingmakers for Corbyn. I think it's going to be a close thing, but I still stand by my position that I believe that the Tories, with the majority over Labour, will have sufficient majority over Labour, even if Labour take on a partner.
Are you saying they will have a majority in the House of Commons, an overall majority in the House of Commons?
I believe that they will have an overall majority in the House of Commons, but I don't believe it will be a healthy one.
And what does that mean for Brexit?
Brexit will go ahead.
Boris is talking about by the end of January. Do you agree with that deadline?
In technical terms, yes, he's quite right. We will leave the EU. We can leave the EU by the end of January. And I believe we will, because he will have that honeymoon period once he is in. And I believe that the more rational members of the Labour Party realise just how angry the public are with them for trying to renege and tell all their voters that they are complete idiots and voted wrong, and the complete idiots they've got on the front bench of the Labour Party are brighter than their voters. Well, I suppose there must be an element of truth in that, but not as great an element of truth as Labour would have you believe.
Now, interestingly, the weekly publication called The Week has come out today, and they are predicting that the Tories will have 43% of the vote, Labour 34%, Lib Democrats 12%, Brexit Party and the Green Party on 3%. Now, what's happened to the Brexit Party? Because Nigel Farage, its leader, was hoping that they were going to get 15% or figures at or around that sort of level. Did he not?
The Nigel Farage cult has more or less collapsed. There's very few of his people still standing. In fact, he's already talking of starting a new cult after the election, which doesn't surprise me. He had the UKIP cult, which was just a Farage cult, but when it stopped, it started to be serious work and stopped earning him as much money. He quit that and left them high and dry with a succession of idiots as leaders, dishonest idiots at that. Then he set up his Brexit Party cult, and I do see it as a cult following. Mm-hmm. He has a number of people who just follow him around and think he's wonderful, but turn a blind eye to how utterly useless he is in so many areas. Mainly because he is a media persona. He has an ability to talk but he has no ability for detail. He never seems to follow anything through. Even with his Brexit MEPs that were elected, he did very well. Numerous of the MEPs, that's members of the European Parliament, who were elected in the name of Brexit, have quit the party since being elected, mainly because they disagree with Farage trying to run it as a dictatorship, I think. And they want him to think politically and intelligently, not something that's within Farage's milieu. So that's the end of Farage until the next party he invents, in my opinion. The Liberal Democrats, the more the public saw of Jo Swinson, the less they liked her. She started out on a high, which has completely collapsed. And of course, if you stop the average man in the street and ask him to name 3 prominent Liberal Democrats at the moment, I doubt they could do it, because the Liberal Democrats, being so bereft of material, have to some extent been forced to turn Jo Swinson into being a cult following.
Just as a reminder, Greg, who is Jo Swinson again, please?
I did mention her name earlier in this podcast as the leader of the Liberal Democrats, right, who I tend to call the Lib Dims, because they ain't the sharpest knife in the box. And one of the great problems that they've got is that if you stopped the average man in the street and asked him the names of 3 Liberal Democrat MPs or candidates, I doubt they could tell you. In fact, I'm interested in politics. I couldn't even tell you who they've got standing in my constituency, because the person's so insignificant. So that's the Liberal Democrats. I think that the Lib Dems are probably going to get, at best, 12 to 15 MPs, but they could do even worse. The only thing that will save them will be people tactically voting who are not prepared to vote for the Tories, but are definitely not prepared to vote for Labour, whether because of their policies or whether because of their fears of the utter incompetence and the distasteful nature of Labour, who have very clearly become the nasty party. Anti-Semitic, racist, to some extent anti-white, with a collection of very mouthy individuals who really don't know how to behave and have very little grasp on what their job is. So I think that it's going to be the Tories with, as I said earlier, around 340 seats. They will have a majority, but they'll have a clear majority over Labour, who will find that the predictions that they will collapse more significant than they had wanted to realise. Don't forget that the Labour Party in the 2017 election were far outstripped, far outclassed, and far outperformed by the Tories. But they ran around saying they'd won the election because they'd come from nowhere and done better than they expected, and definitely better than they deserved when we watched their subsequent performance. That's my prediction for this election. I appreciate that you just want a brief comment on it.
Absolutely.
There's lots more that could be said, but it is my opinion that once Brexit is underway, the pound will continue to strengthen, not on its immediate results, but on its immediate potential, because it will show that Britain is climbing back to a more successful position than it's had for the last almost 50 years of being fettered and bound hand and foot by the strongly communistic style of unelected bureaucrats and the barking mad law of Roman law as pertains in the European disunion.
Greg, thank you very much. The bad news, of course, is for those holding gold and silver, is if the pound does strengthen, then it does become cheaper in sterling terms. So if you're holding a load and we're hoping to profit, that might go down. But if you anticipate buying some, then it might be a very good opportunity to do so.
When it comes to gold and silver, it is a game for gamblers. And gamblers make money by selling at the right time and buying at the right time. I cannot feel sorry for them if they do it wrong.
Or for hedgers, Greg, over the long
Yes,
term.
I was going to say,
Yes.
or they're taking the long-term view,
Absolutely.
and they will come right using gold and silver as a hedge against inflation. They may not make a lot of money, but at least the money they have today will still be worth the same in 10 or 15 years' time. And again, I would suggest that silver is a very good way of accruing enough to buy gold for someone under 40, and gold will give you a more solid return from 40 onwards.
And on that note, Greg, thank you very much.
May your day improve.
We hope you have found this video interesting and informative. And if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.